Good evening, everyone. My name is Melinda Garfield, and I am the Executive Director of Westwood Media Center. On behalf of our organization's staff and Board of Directors, we want to welcome you to this live candidate forum. For those of you who don't know, WMC is a 501c3 nonprofit funded by Westwood residents who subscribe to cable TV. We are contracted by the town of Westwood to provide these services and value that partnership. WMC's mission is to promote and enhance local television and digital media content to Westwood residents via cable and online channels to support an informed and active citizenry, increase the transparency and quality of civic decision-making, deepen understanding of local issues of importance, and promote civility in public dialogue while respecting the rights to free speech and creative expression. We are proud to act as a trustworthy resource and provider of local information to the residents of Westwood. The views on tonight's forum are solely those of each candidate and do not represent our organization, its staff, or the board of directors. You can find this program replayed along with countless others on our government TV channel, Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon Channel 42. Our content is ready for on-demand viewing at any time on our YouTube channel. Just search Westwood Media Center Programming. We encourage you to visit our website to watch all the candidate introductions that were filmed this election season. Westwood's annual town election will be held this year on Tuesday, April 26th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Please visit the town's website for specific details. One change to note is that every resident will be voting at the Westwood High School. Tonight, we've teamed up with our community partner, the League of Women Voters, to bring you this special event. I'd now like to introduce Marlene Warner, your moderator for this evening.
Thank you, Melinda, and good evening and welcome, everyone. Again, I'm Marlene Warner, a member of the League of Women Voters of Salem, Massachusetts. I will serve as tonight's moderator. We are pleased to partner with the Westwood Media Center to offer this candidate forum tonight, and I'm so pleased all the contested candidates can join us this evening. Residents submitted so many questions for us in advance, and we've done our very best to include as many as we can in the time set aside for the forum tonight. If your question is not addressed this evening, we highly encourage you to reach out to the candidates for their individual responses. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that promotes informed and active participation in government. The League does not support or oppose specific candidates or political parties. It does, however, take positions and advocates for issues that it has studied. Membership in the League is open to men and women 16 years and older. The League is fully committed to ensure compliance in principle and in practice with our diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Now for tonight, let me explain the format for our debate. We will pose questions that have been submitted prior to the debate by League members and, as previously mentioned, mostly from community members. Please be assured that all efforts are made to create a wall between the candidates and the League debate planning. This barrier specifically includes no access to debate questions in advance. If you have any concern about this, please do not hesitate to contact the League. When this broadcast is shared, it must be broadcast in its entirety with no edits. Questions will be addressed to all candidates. Each candidate can respond to the questions with a limit of 90 seconds, a minute and 30 seconds, and yet you are not required to use the entire 90 seconds. Time will start when you speak to allow time for consideration. Final closing statements will be limited to 90 seconds. If a candidate exceeds the time limit, he or she may be muted. We will start this evening with the candidates for Planning Board, Tom McCusker and Philip Giordano. Good evening.
Good evening.
Tom can hear me. Philip, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Terrific. And were you able to hear my introduction so you understand the rules?
I did not hear an introduction. I just was let in. Okay,
so let me repeat that so you all are made aware. So let me explain the format for our debate. We will pose questions that have been submitted prior to the debate by League members and community members, primarily community members. Please be assured that all efforts are made to create a wall between the candidates and the league debate planning. This barrier specifically includes no access to debate questions. If anyone, including the candidates, have any concerns about this, please do not hesitate to contact the league. When this broadcast is shared, it must be broadcast in its entirety with no edits. Questions will be addressed to all candidates. Each candidate can respond to the questions with a limit of 90 seconds. However, you are not required to use those full 90 seconds if you don't wish. The time will start when you start to speak to allow time for consideration of the question. Final closing statements will be limited to 90 seconds. If a candidate exceeds the time limit, he may be muted. So this evening, we're going to start with the candidates for planning board, the two of you, Tom McCusker and Philip Giordano. I hope I didn't murder your names. I apologize in advance. So Tom and Philip, we will rotate who is offered the first question. Both understand and can hear me okay?
I can. I just, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Oh, it's fine with me.
Okay.
I just worry about my internet connection. It's been intermittent, so if I glitch, please let me know.
I will do that. And you wouldn't be the first, so not to worry.
Yes.
We'll figure it out as we move ahead. So I'm going to first offer the first question to Tom. Would you please state the strengths and experiences you have that make you qualified for a seat on the planning board?
I have lived in Westwood for over 56 years. I moved into town in 1966. 2 years later, I was elected to the Board of Selectmen for a 3-year term and subsequently re-elected 2 other times. In 1979, I was appointed town council and retired from that position in 2019. About a year ago, I was appointed to a vacancy on the planning board, and I believe that my experience in town government well over 50 years certainly qualifies me to contribute to the town, and I wish to continue to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tom. Philip, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I think I have a sense. I just want to thank the league and all the participants, the Westwood Media Center, for the opportunity to be able to have this forum. I think it's critical and it's important for people to be able to have the opportunity to hear and see candidates, especially, for consequential elections such as this. I also want to thank Mr. McCusker for his service. He has been in the town for so many decades, a long time, has been a participant and service to the town. And there's no question that I can't match, 56 years or so of experience in town government. But I do think there is, it's important to have fresh ideas and to have some new perspectives on some of the issues that are now facing us in 2022, particularly as we hopefully are entering in the post-pandemic kind of era. The problems that might have been appropriate in the 70s and not that appropriate. I have experience as an attorney, which requires critical analysis, fact patterns, and circumstances, which are much different than those on an everyday basis. And I certainly do not have the experience that Mr. McCusker has in terms of town activities, but I've been a resident for 24 years, have brought up my 4 children in this town, and look forward to being able to serve on the planning board.
Thank you very much. So the next question is going to be directed to you first, Philip.
Okay.
Do you support Westwood as a more walkable town? And how would you work towards that goal of improved pedestrian access and safety if you were elected to the planning board?
I do. There is the idea of being a walkable town has many aspects, and it impacts, as I say, our daily life. We have all experienced some of the traffic congestion that occurs on High Street. We have all experienced, the convenience and some of the detriments of modern daily life in which automobiles are necessary, but they also can, impact our daily life. Being able to have a walkable time for, existence in a pedestrian friendly environment is important. Having, walkways on Gay Street, being able to walk in terms of some of the issues that are related to the multifamily housing issues and pedestrian friendly environments, zoning issues that are currently going on. I think it's important. I've been fortunate to be able to live in the Maze, which is right near the high school. And that has given my family and my children, as they were growing up, the opportunity to walk over to the school, be able to access the fields, the tennis courts and whatnot on a family-friendly basis. I grew up in Boston and lived in New York City, so I know the benefits of being pedestrian friendly, because that was one of the best aspects, is being able to have access to facilities and all sorts of amenities that are not necessarily by town access, by car access only.
Great. Thank you, Philip. Thomas, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have it, Marlene. I live over in the Islington section of Westwood, and my home is approximately 2 miles from what was then my office at the town hall, walking along Gay Street. My heart doctor a number of years ago suggested that it would be good for me to walk that 2 miles every day, back and forth. And I thought it was a good idea, so I tried it. I could run off the road on Gay Street, I don't know how many times on my way to the town hall. And at the end of the day, I called my wife to come and get me. I fully support the proposal of a sidewalk from Islington, Pine Lane, Gay Street, out to High Street. I think it would be tremendously important to further bring together the two sections of town, Islington and Westwood. And I believe it would be a great benefit to the community.
Terrific. Well, this is a little bit more along that same idea. So Tom, we'll start with you. The Board of Selectmen recently voted 2-1 not to place on the warrant the updates related to sidewalks on Gay Street after the town had invested funds for design, as well as worked with abutters to address concerns. How can boards in the town work together to support recommendations of the comprehensive plan?
Is that for me? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, I was somewhat disappointed in the board's decision not to pursue the sidewalk. I've been in favor of that for a number of years. And I will be working very diligently and hard to try to convince the selectmen and other members of town boards and commissions to get that project back on track and to get it moving. I think it's extremely important.
Thank you very much. Philip, would you like me to repeat it?
No, I think I understand. And it's clear that any decision has to be brought together with the various, aspects of the select board, the planning board, and the interests that affect different neighbors and towns. And then obviously decision-making has to be made. I'll echo Mr. McCusker a little bit that I was a little disappointed in that aspect, because I think it is an issue that should be better aired and more considered with more communication with the town. That's something that I would hope that we can improve upon, which is to allow, instead of just having people try to, sort through the various website pages and whatnot, but to have a further, discussion of the pros and cons, the counterpoints that are going to be made that impacts not just the neighbors. And obviously, if there were decisions that impact, different parts of the town, they should be considered. I think it's an important issue. I think it's an issue that we should be revisiting, and I support those efforts because I think it's something that the town needs to consider, and hopefully, I'll have the opportunity to work with others to be able to reconsider that.
Terrific. Thank you. Philip, I'm going to start with you now.
Okay.
Remaining on the topic of the comprehensive plan, is there a specific zoning change you would suggest and support to make progress towards any other specific goal of the plan? Or can you identify another area in the plan that is a priority for you? Please be specific and elaborate.
I'm going to ask you to restate the question. It's a little bit
Sure.
Hard to understand.
It's a little convoluted. I understand.
Yes.
Okay, so comprehensive plan. Is there a specific zoning change that you would suggest and support to make progress towards any other specific goals? So beyond the current issues we've been talking about in terms of the sidewalks, any other specific goal of the plan? So that's kind of part one. Or can you identify another area in the plan that is a priority for you? Please be specific and elaborate.
Well, far be it from me to simply, because that involves a larger context as compared to just a recommendation that I would take towards, an amendment to the plan. One of the things that I think, which is some of the ongoing issues on the multifamily housing and the new statutes. I think one of the ways that we need is more coordination among the various parts. The sidewalk issue is a good example. The multifamily housing issues are also important, where FinCom has had certain questions and some of those are to be considered. In trying to be specific, but the purpose is obviously to act in the best interests of the town and in its residents. And that's one of the things that I hope to bring as my experience as an attorney has been. It is important that we recognize that proposals have an impact on certain aspects of the town, and we have to weigh those in a holistic process that will be impacting others that might be directly adjacent, some people that might be nearby. And it is important that we look at the macro level of the plan in conjunction with the individual concerns. I know that's a little bit of a broad brush, but I think that's the approach that I would be taking towards the issue.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I would point to an article that's in the warrant for the annual town meeting relative to multifamily dwellings under the new statute that we are mandated to have zoning for multifamily dwellings within a half a mile of our two railroad stations. And the planning board has worked extremely hard on that issue. It is part of the comprehensive plan to try to bring that to fruition. And we have the article at the town meeting for, I think, 3 parcels in town, one on Everett Street and 2 others over on University Station. But we're running into problems with the state because the statute was very poorly drafted and the proposed regulations are in conflict with the statute. So I'm working with the planning board on that, and I will have more to say about this at the town meeting. But I think it's very important that we go forward with the proposal, and I believe it will be of a great benefit to the town, particularly to people who really can't afford to live in town. Thank you.
Well, this is a perfect segue to the next question. You both brought up housing. This is going to be first directed to Tom. What specific goals would you support to maintain or extend affordable housing units in Westwood?
Well, again, I'll get back to Article 1 in the town meeting, which we were mandated to create at least one district of a reasonable size. And therein lies the rub with the state. They're talking about 25 acres and 50 acres. We believe in Westwood, because of our configuration, that 2 acres is more reasonable. And that would allow, excuse me 1 minute, 15 units per acre. So we could conceivably have zoning in place that if a developer wanted to, he could develop 30 buildings for multi-family housing. And state has told us that if we don't put something in place, we face the risk of losing various state grants, some of which we have already enjoyed, and that they would be in jeopardy. But again, for me, as of right now, multifamily dwellings are critically important to the future of the town.
Thank you, Tom. Philip, the same question?
Yes, this is an issue that I have been studying. Obviously, not on the inside. I don't have the same level of information that obviously Tom may have, and it's a critically important issue. I've been reviewing some of the language of the proposals. And I've looked at the regulation. The statute says one district of reasonable size. The draft regulations have talked about the word flexibility, have talked about that not all communities are the same. For those that may not be aware, Westwood has bus stations and commuter rail, and then that has obviously a much differing impact as it may have on the town. Given some of the issues that are going on, my concern is more, and I applaud the planning board's homework. They've been working on this diligently, but we have to make sure while that this process is still unfolding, that some of the issues aren't already put in place before there is more clarity, and there needs to be more clarity. I have a number of issues that I just have, obviously don't have the time to get into them at this point, but this is an important issue that has to be addressed with an understanding and proper due diligence that we know what we're going to be getting ourselves into.
Very good. Thank you. So we're going to switch gears a little, and we're going to start with Philip. Do you support the town meeting article regarding solar panels? This is kind of a multi-stage question. So
multi-stage question.
Do you support the town meeting article regarding solar panels? Additionally, what planning board measures would you propose or support to help Westwood reduce its dependence on fossil fuel hookups, or requirements for renewable energy systems and new construction? Ooh, in 90 seconds. Good luck.
I'm just going to solve all those issues in a minute and a half. Okay, I'll give it my best shot. One of the things that's impacting us all is obviously the impact of electricity. I have a new HVAC unit in my own home, and I've seen the electric bill has skyrocketed. Our dependency on fossil fuels has clearly been is going to be a hot topic, not just in Westwood, but throughout the country. Solar panels are something that we as a town, obviously as a community, need and should be supportive of. The concept of trying to use incentives and disincentives, just trying to boil it down to the planning board level, is something that I think, which is where the new approach that I'm trying to suggest is important. Because there is obviously the ability to try to get us in a community, a nation, a state, to expand into more electrified vehicles, more opportunities to try to reduce our impact on fossil fuels. It's very difficult to be able to get a connection without having access to electric vehicle connections in a nearby facility. Those are things that I think the planning board can use, whether it's by conditions for proposals or to assist and using incentives, escrow requirements, or disincentives for proposals that come to us to try to assist in the way that we need to move the town and the state in that direction. 90 seconds. I hope I got the whole thing in.
Did a nice job. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you.
Tommy, you're up.
Okay, well, solar panels, we want to encourage renewable energy, which is one of the reasons why we have the article we proposed the article for town meeting on solar panels. Additionally, over at University Station, if you go up top and look down on the roofs of many of the buildings at University Station, you will see they're covered with solar panels. And in line with that, we have had a number of public hearings on a hotel that is being proposed to be built down at University Station. And we had a great deal of discussion with the developer at our last meeting relative to solar panels. And we installed, and as Phil pointed out, we can encourage this by installing conditions on our approvals of these various projects. And we have done that with this hotel over at University Station. And we fully expect that there'll be solar panels on the roof of that building.
Excellent. Thank you. So Tom, we're going to start with you for this next question. It appears the planning board has lost a significant amount of autonomy as each meeting is attended and influenced by the town legal counsel, the town planner, and director of community and economic development. How would you, as a planning board member, propose to reverse this perception and improve transparency between the town residents and the planning board?
Well, I think the perception is a misperception. We rely heavily, and while I was town council, the planning board relied heavily on my advice. We rely heavily on the advice and expertise of the town planner. We rely heavily on the expertise of Nora Loughnane, who is an outstanding person, has done an outstanding job. I do not believe that the planning board has lost any autonomy because of the town planner and Nora Loughnane and Patrick Ahern being at the meeting. Far from that at all. I believe that they are of great benefit to the board and allow us to make reasoned decisions.
Thank you, Tom. Philip?
I am a neighbor of Pat Ahern. I've known Pat Ahern for a long time. He's a great person, and I have a great deal of respect. Abby, I only knew her somewhat, just obviously through the planning board a little bit, and Nora is obviously a great resource to the town. But one of the things, this is an issue, I would take a much different approach than what Mr. McCusker is suggesting, which is not characterizing a question from the public as a misperception, but recognizing that is an issue for communication, for trying to make sure that they understand that the community is a participant, that the community's ideas and views are being listened to, as compared to me simply telling whoever the resident may be that this is a misperception. They may be resources, and I think the appearance that perhaps they are almost non-voting members. Obviously, I don't agree with that. I know Pat Ahern, I know them all, and Abby well. But we want to make sure we improve the communication. We give a sense of transparency, and the board is the ones making the decisions, as compared to, simply communicating to the residents that their concerns are not being heard. I want to make sure that residents' concerns, such as this one, is being heard.
Very good. Thank you both. Philip, we're going to start with you on this next one.
Okay.
It seems like developments get approved, such as former Westwood Lodge and the condos retail shops, formerly the ICC, with renderings of a lot of trees and green space, but that in the final product, the plantings were noticeably less in both. What steps would you propose to ensure what gets proposed actually gets followed through on?
I agree with that. That's something that I have in my observations of the planning board's meetings, and this is not a criticism of the planning boards, but this is something that I hope would be, either a new approach or a new way of trying to deal with some of the issues. I think it is an opportunity to be able to have a development plan in Westwood, but obviously the priority of the interests are the people of Westwood and the residents of Westwood. One of the things that I think is a useful device is the use of escrow. There are various proposals. Obviously, they're future oriented because nobody can predict the future. When you're putting in an application, you're making drawings and renderings, and you're giving a suggestion as to what's going to occur, whether it's traffic, whether it's plantings, whether it's a variety of things. Ultimately, though, as development occurs, it's long after the fact. The residents don't have any further information, and there's no understanding, certainly from the town's perspective or the residents' perspective, as to why those conditions as they were originally proposed weren't met. I think a use of escrow might be a little bit more frequently employed, simply to say, if you're going to say this is only going to be the impact on traffic or plantings, set aside either some money or some conditions that then will be released upon after you meet those conditions. The town can then follow up and residents be apprised that they are being met. Thanks.
Very good. Tom, do you want to take a stab at that one as well?
Yeah, my experience over the years has been that developers will come before the planning board with their renderings, their drawings. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do the other thing. And the planning board then holds public hearings over a period of time. This allows the planning board to probe deeply into exactly what it is the developer wants to do and what he can do. It also gives the town citizens an opportunity to participate in the process. At the end of the day, if the planning board approves a project, they approve it under a special permit document, which lists all of the conditions that they require be accomplished. And if those conditions are not accomplished, then the developer is in violation of the special permit and his development is at risk. So we rely on the building inspector, the EPW, the town planner to make sure that those conditions are met. And I think pretty much by and large, they have been met.
Okay, thank you. This is the last question, and I'm going to start with you, Tom. And then after this question, we'll go to final statements. So again, Tom, the town is currently working with Hale to create a conservation restriction to permanently preserve its land as open space, which will require financial contribution from the town. What should be considered as they move forward with those discussions, since this will be related to land use and has some potential development ramifications?
Okay, well, a number of years ago, Hale Reservation sold off, I think, 10, 15 acres of its property. And at the time, the town was under the impression that that property could not be developed. And we were wrong. And it caused a severe problem in a neighborhood in the town. So with Hale coming forward at this point, because they recognize the needs of the town, to put that entire parcel, I'm not sure how many acres there are, but it's very, very extensive, under a conservation restriction so that it cannot be developed in the future, I think is very, very important to the town. And I'm not quite sure what commitments the town needs to make on a financial basis, but I'm also sure that the town will extract certain benefits from Hale in return for that. And the benefit, the principal benefit we all will get is the fact that the property cannot be developed at all.
Thank you very much. Philip?
This is an issue that is just starting to bubble, and it's gonna rise to the surface, and it's hopefully doesn't get to a boil. There's a lot of considerations. Obviously, the town of Westwood has a tremendous interest in Hale. My family and I and our friends, the entire town has had the benefit of Hale and enjoyed its open space and whatnot. But it also is going to impact the town. And this is something where I again suggest that, further transparency, communication and whatnot, so the residents understand where things are and where things are not. One of the things that is obviously going to be a concern is going to be the financial commitment. We are undertaking a tremendous proposal with respect to, the Hanlon Deerfield School project. There's other issues that are going to be coming up that with whether it's other schools and whatnot. It is clearly, undeniably in the town's interest to preserve Hale. That is necessary. We need to balance and be able to make sure that the financial commitment is one that the town is comfortable with. We need to make sure that the town and the people have an open process so that they have communication. This is an issue that we have to make sure is openly discussed and people are able to give their views upon.
Thank you, Philip. At this point, we will have time for closing statements from each of the candidates. And we're going to start with you, Philip, and just a reminder that once again, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. Once again, I just want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Westwood Media Center for the opportunity to be able to, just have an opportunity to speak and perhaps give a little bit of my views. And so you get a chance to be introduced to me. As I say, Mr. McCusker has provided tremendous service to the town, and I want to thank him for his service. He's been with the town for decades. He has, helped Westwood be the community that we know and that my family has been brought up in, and many families just enjoy Westwood. Westwood is at a point where there's many changes going on, whether it's, whether there is proposals before the planning board, whether it's the Hale issues and whatnot. And I suggested that certainly we have to be able to take a little bit of a fresh approach in terms of our considerations, what are going to be the needs of the town and those for the new families that are in the town. I've lived in Westwood for 24 years, have brought up 4 children here, have had the opportunity to coach soccer, basketball, little league, etc. I think that it is important that we give consideration for the town. They are, members of this community, and we want to make sure that their views are heard. Just want to thank you. I want to thank the opportunity to be able to speak to people, and I ask for your support and your vote on the election of April 26th.
Thank you very much. Tom?
Well, thank you for the opportunity you've afforded me. I would simply ask the voters for their consideration for my candidacy. I believe that I still have much to contribute to the town. And I also believe, and I'm probably prejudiced on this basis, but I believe that we live in probably one of the best run communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Bond rating is AAA, has been for a number of years, and we hope to continue in that fashion. We have the best school system in the area. I put 5 of my children through the school system. I also was involved in youth hockey, Little League baseball, all of the sports, coaching, and all of that. So I simply say I would like to continue to contribute, and I ask for the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
I want to thank both of you for your time and your expertise and your passion that you brought this evening, and wish you both best of luck in your candidacies.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Now we will move on to our candidates for school committee. And I think I'm just going to wait for a moment until they are up on the screen before I go over the rules again. Good evening. Can all 3 of you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm not sure if you saw the beginning earlier, but let me just reintroduce myself. I'm Marlene Warner, a member of the League of Women Voters of Salem, Massachusetts, and I will serve as the moderator this evening. And we want to remind folks that all the candidates will be asked all of the questions. We will go round robin, so we'll just continue to rotate between all of you. Each candidate will be asked to respond to a question in no more than 90 seconds or a minute and a half, but you certainly are not required to use that full 90 seconds. Time will start when you speak to allow for consideration of the question. Final closing statements will be limited to 90 seconds as well. If a candidate exceeds the time limit of 90 seconds, he or she may be muted. So now, next, I would like to introduce and welcome the candidates for school committee: Heather Morrison, Dory Parmalee, I'm sorry if that's the wrong pronunciation, and Tony Mullen. Candidates, we will again rotate who receives the first question as we progress. The first question is going to start with Heather. What have been some of your volunteering experience with children or parents in the community? And how have these experiences been helpful to you in service as a school committee member?
Thank you, Marlene. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and Westwood Media for allowing us this opportunity, and everybody who's listening tonight and listening to the recording in the future. I appreciate everybody's interest in the election. As far as my volunteer opportunities, over the last 2 years, I have really dedicated a lot of time and effort with my expertise in education to advocate for our students and for full-time in-person education. I've been working a lot with a group called Bring Kids Back, and developed with some other parents, an organization here in Westwood, where we really focused on what was going on during the pandemic, gathering information, talking with experts, and helping parents understand what was going on. The last 2 years have been really, really tough. And coming from my experience in education and running a school that was open throughout the pandemic, I really felt that I had a lot to give the community. And I really wanted to help Westwood and the students allowing the kids to have the best education possible. And I really felt that was full-time in person. And that's, really, really focused my time over the last 2 years, and have learned a lot about the school committee by attending nearly each and every meeting throughout the last 2 years to learn more and to build on my experience in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Dory, you're up next. And I should have said earlier, if any of you want me to repeat the question, please don't hesitate to say that. So go ahead, Dory.
Thank you so much, Marlene. And yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters, as well as Westwood Media, for hosting this important event during the lead up to April 26th. I've been involved in the community ever since we moved here. I very early in our time here joined the Westwood Young Women's Club and was involved in a lot of the programming and initiatives that took place that I think are well known across our community. When my oldest son joined Hanlon as a kindergartner, I then pivoted my volunteerism to our schools and began as a room parent and a library aide, very quickly then joined CPAC, which is a parent organization for students with parents who have students with special needs, and became a school liaison. And during that time, I contributed to a lot of events. I then became the treasurer of the Integrated Preschool PTO, and then am now the co-president of the Hanlon PTO. And during the pandemic, I was really proud of a lot of the activities we were able to carry out in order to continue to foster fun for our kids and continue to build community. Some of those things included our diversity, equity, and inclusion story walk, as well as the Westwood Together community signs that I still see up and around. So really proud of my involvement and really, really excited to be part of the Westwood community.
Excellent. Tony, you're next.
Great. I'd just like to echo Dory and Heather. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, and also thank you, Heather and Dory, for participating tonight. So I've done I've really focused almost all my volunteer activities on youth-focused activities, starting as a room parent for my daughter Maggie when she was in kindergarten. I also started coaching soccer and basketball on the course a lot. I wanted to join a board, so I decided to join the Westwood Youth Soccer Board, where I've been a coordinator as well as the equipment manager most recently, and vice president. 6 years ago, I ran for school committee, so I've been on the school committee for the last 6 years. I've also done some other youth-focused organizations broader than Westwood. I'm on the Norfolk County Sheriff's District's Task Force on Mental Illness, as well as substance abuse. I'm also the chapter leader of Start Time Later, which advocates for start times across the Commonwealth as well. And if I don't have enough on my plate, on Monday, I'll be running the Boston Marathon on behalf of Boston Children's Hospital.
I hope it's okay that I say good luck to you on Monday. But,
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. So next up, the second question, we're going to start with Dory. What particular issue or issues motivate you to run for school committee at this particular time?
Thanks so much. So actually, my motivation for school committee began quite some time ago when I actually have a very close friend who's involved in the school committee within her own community, and have talked with her over the years about sort of pivoting from being involved in PTOs, which is where she got her start, into school committee. And so, one of the pieces of advice that she gave me along the way was to sort of pick a time that's right for you and for your family. Our family happens to be at a point where change is afoot. We have a 5th grader who's getting ready to join Thurston. And so, I felt like at the very beginning of this year, as I gave it some thought, that this would be the right moment for our family. In terms of, the issues, I think, there's certainly the pandemic, which hopefully, we're reaching somewhat the end of, that I think has been on everyone's minds, and certainly would like to be part of thinking about how we're going to carry things forward. I believe that thinking about the school structures that we have in place, starting with hopefully the Hanlon and Deerfield project, as well as hopefully looking at other buildings, is something I've been thinking about. And then thinking about how we can create an environment for our schools where everyone feels safe and included is certainly something that is top of mind, I think, for a lot of us these days.
Great. Thank you, Dory. Tony?
Yeah, so when I ran 6 years ago, there were 2 issues that really motivated me and still motivate me. The first issue was around the whole child, which is really supporting the kind of the mental, the social, emotional, as well as the physical health of our children. And I'm proud of the progress we made there over the last 6 years. We've invested in several new counselors, in an SEL coordinator. We invested in a social worker, as well as I'm excited to know that we have a new Thurston Middle School Dean of Students that will be starting the fall. So we made some great progress there. And I continue to be passionate about that issue. That's why I'm running again. One of the key priorities that we've already started to work on is later start times at the secondary level, which would have, I think, a positive impact on the mental and physical health of the children. So I continue to be really passionate about the whole child. Second one that I was passionate about 6 years ago and continue to be passionate about, as well as academic excellence. Over the course of the last 6 years, we've lowered the class sizes of the elementary schools, as well as we put in place some new class size guidelines that have led to our schools being ranked in the top 5% of the state. And I want to continue that academic excellence. One key area I want to continue to focus on is math. We're actually starting a math curriculum review that I'm part of. Math, because without saying, is extremely important despite any career you do. So I look forward over the next year to going through the math curriculum review.
Thank you, Tony. Heather?
I think my answer might be not very exciting because I really want to echo a lot of what Dory and Tony are saying. I think we're in a lot of agreement on this topic, and that we all feel that, myself included, that academic excellence is of primary importance to me. I want to make sure that all students in Westwood are really receiving the most well-rounded education that we can across all areas, whether it's our most advanced students or our special education program, which is absolutely amazing. So that is definitely an area that is very important to me. And as an educator myself, I have over 20 years experience in special education, and I was really hoping that I can provide some of that level of expertise to the committee, as well as different items related to running a school, regulatory, licensing type things that all schools need to follow in Massachusetts, which I'm already very aware of from my own experience at work over the last 20 years. And really overall, my passion being the kids. We all want the kids to be successful. We want what is best for them. We know that Westwood has a very good school. We have a very good school system here. And I want to make sure that we stay focused on that. We all know that there were some dips and things like test scores and that over the pandemic. And I want to make sure that we can get those back up again, like Tony was just saying, math, science, those areas in particular, and make sure that we can continue to provide an excellent education for our kids.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, Tony, you're up next. What do you see as Westwood Public Schools' largest strength, as well as the largest area for improvement?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think our greatest strength really is our educators. We have amazing educators from kindergarten all the way through the high school. I haven't experienced that personally with my two daughters. Connected with that, I think we have amazing kind of leadership, both the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and their entire team, the head of student services, really the whole leadership team, extremely strong in both curriculum as well as supporting those students with special needs. So I think amazing leadership, amazing educators. And third, I think just really strength around kind of culture. I think we have a really strong culture, both in our community as well as in our schools, a culture of supporting our students and really caring about our students. As far as the area of improvement, I think we continue to need to focus a lot, particularly on 6th through 8th grade. I think we need to, I think part of the reason I advocated for the new dean of students was really to help those challenging years. Those are tough years if any of you remember back being 12 to 13, those are very challenging years. I think we continue to see that. So I think we need to continue to invest there, as well as making sure that those children are really prepared for life, not just college. So I think that's going to be a continued area that we as a school committee need to continue to focus on in the coming years.
Thank you, Tony. Heather?
Yes, I would agree. I think, our strengths are definitely our elementary schools. We have really wonderful elementary schools that provide a great start in education for our kids that have so many resources there that can help them be successful, both academically, socially, emotionally. I myself, with my 3 kids, have experienced that. Now, my youngest is in 4th grade now, so have seen them go through the Martha Jones School and really done well. I also have a high schooler now and see the amazing opportunities that are available to the high school students, and also learning about the incredible schools that these kids are getting into for college. I was just really blown away by talking to parents, as well as the list that Emily Parks put up at the last school committee meeting of all the colleges they're going to attend. So there's no doubt that there are things that are going very well here. I would echo what Tony said. The middle schools always seem to be a challenge. And I think, again, as he noted, part of that I think is just the age, that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, those are tough years for everybody. But I think the increased focus that we're starting to provide, and to continue to really stay focused on that age group and what we can do to provide them with additional supports and opportunities to make them successful. And one area that I'd love to see us look more at are other educational opportunities, other types of schools or vocational schools, things like that, to make sure that students are really aware of all the different opportunities that are available to them.
Thank you, Heather. And Dory?
Thank you so much. I agree. I think that the district that we live in is fantastic. It's one of the reasons that our family decided to live here, and I think a lot of families. I have to echo what Tony said in that I feel like our educators are our greatest strength. I feel like they're very dedicated to our students across the board. I haven't met an educator yet who doesn't want to come to work. In fact, many of them during COVID sort of shared with me that they felt really, really invigorated, by the challenge to have to kind of pivot and think about curriculum in a different way, even though it was tough. And I really admire and respect that. I think that that leads to a strength for us in terms of academics. There will always be room for improvement, right? That's why we continue to press forward. But I think we see the strength of our teachers reflected in some of our scores and in sort of the the wonderful output that we have of students. Areas for improvement, actually, I feel like I've heard recently that across the board, it's been a little bit difficult to retain some of our teachers. And I think that's an area where we could look a little deeper and find out things that we could do to help them feel like this is a place that they can stay and be happy and part of. And that's not unique to the education industry. I think that's everywhere. And again, I have to echo, certainly what Heather and Tony said around the areas of math and middle school. Thank you.
All right. Next question, we're going to start with Heather. The town and schools, as you know, have worked to develop statements of support in the broad areas of diversity, equity, and inclusivity. What is your understanding of what is entailed in this work as it relates to the schools and the district?
Sure. So I am aware of the statement that the school committee has supported, as well as the town, as well as some other statements that have gone around from different groups. And my understanding of how it relates to school is that I think the most important thing is for all children to feel welcome and supported in school, no matter who they are or what they believe in, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's their politics, for that matter, their religion. Everyone should feel welcome at school and supported, and the students should be able to have discussions at school openly and debate and learn how to have these difficult conversations with each other. And so, my understanding is really that we all want to create a community where the kids are feeling supported, and that any of these types of lessons are done at age appropriate times. What a lesson that is incorporated for a kindergartner will be different than a fifth grader, will be different than a high schooler. And so I think we just want to continue to foster a community where everyone feels welcome and supported, and that we do everything we can to increase our diversity as well. One of the ways that we're doing that is by expanding our METCO program. And I know there was discussion about that at recent school committee meetings that will now be in the elementary school ages. And I think that that's a great program. And I'm really glad that we were able to expand that program, because that's another step in the right direction of increasing the diversity in the town.
Thank you, Heather. Dory?
Thanks. Do you think you could repeat the question for me, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The town and schools, as you know, have worked to develop statements of support in the broad areas of diversity, equity, and inclusivity. What is your understanding of what is entailed in this work as it relates to the schools and the district?
Thank you so much. I was really pleased to see those statements come forward. I think they were needed in order for our community to become united. And I'm really excited to see how they are carried forward. Through attending the last school committee meeting, my understanding is we're in the process of pursuing an equity audit. And I believe that will be really important in helping us determine next steps to identify, again, where our strengths are and where our gaps are. I do certainly believe that schools should be inclusive, safe environments where all students can be, where all of their developmental needs can be met, and where they can be cultivated to be citizens of our global community. I believe that the curriculum that we have been putting into place up to date meets a lot of the standards, and I think that the thoughts going forward are really headed in the right direction. And I'm excited to see, how our teachers really pull together to use their talents and their education to foster, really deep thinkers, folks that can, or students that can think critically and be prepared to eventually leave Westwood, hopefully, and head out into the greater world, as sad as that might make all of us as parents. Thanks.
Thank you, Dory. And Tony?
Yeah, so I'll echo some of Heather and Dory's. I think as I think about that statement, I think it's DE&I to me is reflected in our district priorities for 2021 to 2022. One of those priorities, as Dory mentioned, was around the equity audit that we've started and should be able to get some results on by December or January. Another piece is one of our second goal we have is around having a more diverse staff. We're starting to make some progress there. It's a long-term goal. This would be a many-year goal, but we are starting to make some progress there. And there's a third goal around creating an environment where all students feel welcome and belonging. And that goes to a lot of the different programs, things like the MECO expansion that we approved. Very excited about approving that back in December. Excited to see it get implemented in the fall. Also really excited about the new Director of Equity, Integration, Community Partnerships. It's a first for Westwood. That's something that the TIFA has moved into that role. Again, that was one of the district priorities as well. And then as I think about kind of step back from, there's been a lot of conversations in town about DE&I. To me, it's about really supporting kids. And I think a good example of that is 3 years ago, we put in place a GSA at Thurston Middle School, which is we were kind of pretty early compared to most other towns in the middle school. But when I reflect on that, it was really just about supporting kids that might have differences and helping them to really both in their kind of the mental health as well as just feel belonging. That to me is kind of the key to anything we do in DE&I.
Thank you, Tony. All right, the next question, we're going to start with Dory. Dory, what is your understanding about how curricula is identified and developed in Westwood Public Schools?
Sure. My understanding is that it starts with a lot of the state standards that are set forth by DESE. And at that point, we then enter a process where the superintendent is able to look through that and create, as Tony just mentioned, goals. And that ultimately the teachers have jurisdiction over, again, using their talents and their creativity to identify the learning methods that are going to be most successful across the learners that they have in their classrooms. Where school committee comes into play is what we're currently seeing now, I think with Tony being part of the curriculum review for math. I believe that our curriculums are in what I understand is a 5-year cycle for review. And the school committee members sit in to participate on those reviews and report back to the team. But ultimately, the superintendent plays a really big role in understanding what's happening in terms of a state level, and then helping to sort of be a go-between with the teachers and her staff to make sure that those standards are being met in a fair way and in a way that is going to, again, be helpful for all of our learners.
Perfect. Tony.
Yeah, I guess I'll probably just echo most of what Dory said, but I'll provide maybe a little input on the math review because that's been an interesting process. But yeah, I think my understanding is similar to what Dory indicated. The DESE, together with kind of the Board of Education, goes through periodic reviews of the frameworks. There's I think a public period actually where you can also publicly participate in that as well. That was pushed. Then those, then the Westwood schools need to do is then align with those different frameworks, right? So if there's changes, an example of that I know that a lot of people have asked about was the social studies, where particularly 8th grade moved from kind of being traditional U.S. history to kind of being a mix of kind of history as well as civics. And people had questions around that, but that was because it was a change at the state, and then Westwood will typically follow align to that. And in the state obviously has MCAS in the back end. Is kind of a measurement of how well you align to those state curriculums. So as far as the curriculum reviews, I think Dory described it very well. I mean, ultimately, obviously the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the teachers, they know a lot more day to day about kind of what good instruction looks like. I think what a school committee member provides is actually a parent perspective. So for example, in math, what we've heard from a lot of parents is the right time to start doing leveling in 7th grade, or should we think about a different time to level, and how do we, kids that might have late bloomers, how do they move on to the fast track in math as an example. So that's kind of where school committee member can actually add additional value.
Thank you, Tony. And Heather?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to have a lot to add after those excellent answers. I would, I guess, expand upon that's, my understanding of, as we all understand, that there's the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks that is set up by DESE. It is changed on a regular basis as needed, and then we need to align with those frameworks. And then schools themselves have some flexibility as to how they can then teach those specific frameworks. With the MCAS being one measurement of how well you are doing in that area. I'd love to expand upon Tony's example about the math leveling and things like that, because I know that's been a topic in other states, at least, I'm not sure as much in Massachusetts, where there's been discussion of removing all levels of things like math, whereas everybody stays at the same level together, and removing any advanced math courses. That's something that as a school committee member, I would not be in support of. I really think that we need to look at what each student needs. And so whether somebody at a more beginner level needs additional support or somebody at a more advanced level needs more challenge, I think we need to continue to pursue that to make sure that all kids are being challenged in the appropriate way. So I think that's an area that school committee could get involved. I don't see or hear anything that Westwood's moving in that direction, but I just give that as an example of where a school committee could get involved with curriculum.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, Tony, we're going to start with you. And this is kind of a long question. What are your views about recent changes in curriculum to represent and include diverse and multiple perspectives? Include in your remarks whether you support all the changes or not, what should be changed, improved upon, or considered as the system moves forward.
Okay. Well, it's a bit of a broad question about all the changes, but I would say generally I've been supportive of kind of aligning with kind of more diverse and inclusion in our, in our curriculum. I think examples of that, particularly most recently, we've done a lot of work in English around kind of, having broader perspectives and broader questions, inclusive, as well as having a mix of classics as well as classical, as well as maybe more inclusive authors and works around belonging. So I'm certainly supportive of that. I think we're going to be doing some similar, we're going to be updating, I think, at the next meeting on social studies, which will kind of, I think, have some similar kind of inclusive, more inclusive work. So I guess I've generally been supportive of everything I've seen so far in those areas. I mean, it's a broad question, so I can't speak if there's something specific, but I think generally I've been supportive of the work that Emily, Allison, as well as all the different leaders in the buildings have been doing in this regards.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Dory?
Thank you so much. I echo a lot of what Tony says, in that I feel like our system does a fantastic job at educating our students across the board. I am certainly in support of any upcoming changes and implementation of DE&I curriculum. I think it's something our students need, again, in order to prepare to, grow up and become citizens of the world. I think that is very important. I think that we need to be really thoughtful with how we enter into our curriculum, so that we make sure that we're being extremely inclusive of everyone across the district, so that everyone really feels as though they are welcome and as though they belong, not that they're just being invited to the meeting, but they're being asked to participate and attend, because I think that really is the difference. We want people to feel like they really are part of the community. And then, the other piece to this that I would say is, I have been in our classrooms as a classroom parent, in our libraries as a library aide. I love seeing the work that our teachers and our students are participating in. I think it's setting our kids up for success. And I'm very much in support of the continuation of that work.
Thank you, Dory. And Heather?
Sure. It was a bit of a broad question, so I'm going to make some assumptions, but I know there have been some recent concerns related to different lessons being taught at the school, and I feel that Emily's letter most recently that sort of outlined some of the lessons that were brought into question was really helpful. I think that part of the problem is that parents can sometimes feel that they're in the dark and they don't understand, or they hear something of what may or may not have happened. And then sort of that story continues to grow. And so I think it's important for the school to be transparent and share those resources with the community, like Emily did in the most recent communication. I really think that by being straightforward, that is helpful to the community members, so they can really see what's going on in the classrooms. In addition, I think it's important that we can continue to consider the age appropriateness of different lessons and how they're taught. And part of that really too is the training that teachers are given. I know that we spend time during the professional development time with the teachers on these types of lessons and the best way to present them so that everybody is included. And finally, I would just like to echo what Dory says about bringing everyone to the table. I think that, there has been a feeling by some community members that they have really been excluded from the discussion and been told to be quiet and to, follow what is happening, and have not really been given that opportunity. So I hope we can improve that.
Thank you. Well, this is kind of a follow-up to that question, starting with Dory. Since embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion is an express goal taken by the town and the school department, how would you respond to parents who are not supportive of some or all of these initiatives?
Thanks. I actually think this is where my background in education and in human resources would be really useful. I am very accustomed to on a day-to-day basis at work, listening to the concerns across any given, employee or manager or leader within an organization, and really taking the time to sit down and hear them out and understand the root of the issue, and then be able to hopefully go out back into the organization or to the governing body and be able to understand what the other side is, right? And hopefully then be able to create some common ground if that's possible. It's not always possible, right? Sometimes you have to agree to disagree, but I do think that best effort should be made to create common ground and remain open to listen. I think there does need to be some guardrails around respectful dialogue and using, kind of a mentality where we agree that we're going to move forward together and have a common goal to reach a level of success that feels good to everyone. But I think it really does truly start with proactive, careful, thoughtful, genuine listening from both parties.
Thank you, Dory. Heather?
Do you mind repeating the question again?
No problem.
Thank you.
Since embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion is an express goal taken by the town and the school department, how would you respond to parents who are not supportive of some or all of these initiatives?
Sure. So, I throughout the last couple of months, as I've been campaigning, I've talked to a lot of parents that have a lot of different feelings on this topic. And what I continue to hear really from all sides is that everyone supports diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have yet to meet anyone who has said to me that that is something that they don't believe in or that they don't want to happen. I think where there are differences are when we get down to those nitty-gritty details of what that means. And so I do think that it is important that we continue to have these conversations in a productive way. And I think one of the unfortunate aspects of school committee and the way it's designed right now is the public comment time. And I know that it needs to be that way. And I'm not suggesting that we necessarily change it, but I think that people are using that as sort of their only opportunity to speak to the community. And it's not a great way to communicate. It's a one-sided conversation. There's no opportunity for a response really from other members. And I would love to see a way where we could bring more people together to have these conversations, because each conversation I've had, whether it's on one side or the other, I really walk away from it learning more and understanding more and feeling that Westwood as a community has a very common goal. They are for the kids. They want what is best for their children and the children of Westwood. And by having these conversations and really getting to know each other, I think that we will be able to accomplish a lot more. I've started doing that work during my campaign, and I hope to continue.
Thank you. Tony?
Yeah, so I think echoing some of the comments, I think a lot of this is continuing to be transparent, with what the work we're doing, and actually educating a little bit our parents around the work, because these things can become buzzwords. We have taken some steps, things like office hours, to actually have the school committee. It's a board meeting. It's not intended to be. And by policy, we don't respond to comments. So but we have done other venues where we can actually, people can connect with us. I will also say, I mean, honestly, I've never known Emily or Allison or Abby not to meet with a parent that has a concern. In my 6 years in the school committee, that's the case. And that's also the case, I can speak for myself. Just an example, I published my cell phone on every door knocker, on every piece of literature. And just today, actually, I had someone reach out with an email, a resident with a lot of concerns around DEI, concerns around our sexual education. And what I did, I went over to his house. We had a 15-minute conversation, and he understood much better, what we were doing. And he actually said, "Yeah, okay, this makes perfect sense. I just wanted to have the information." So that's my offer to anyone who's listening today: is I'll come by your house if you want, and we can have that conversation, because I think that's actually one of the downsides. I think that in the last 2 years, that people haven't. It's been too much emails and too much Zoom. Nothing like a face-to-face conversation, I think, to kind of help bridge the gaps.
Terrific. Thank you. Next question, we're going to start with Heather. Heather, how would you address the needs at the Thurston Middle School? Students of this age seem to need more structured social opportunities to practice their social skills and promote kindness. And all of you spoke to this a little bit earlier. At the same time, we need to address gaps, particularly in math, another topic that's already come up this evening. Both of these issues are equally as important, and middle school often seems to get lost in the shuffle of Westwood public school programming. What additional support can be provided at this level?
Sure. I wish I had an easy answer for this. I certainly don't, because I'm sure if there was an easy one, we would already be doing it here at Westwood. And I think, as Tony's mentioned, we are taking some steps to help improve things. One thing that I think this question speaks to is having those extracurricular opportunities for our middle schoolers. I think that, again, as Tony just mentioned, so much time behind screens, email, texting, that those students in particular, those middle school critical age students that were hit particularly hard by the pandemic at a time when they really need to flourish and socialize, were kept inside and behind screens and given very artificial ways of communicating with each other. And as we know, that can sometimes breed more hostility and misbehavior than is appropriate. So I hope that, one, being in person is going to really, help reset these kids and get them back. I think, two, offering additional extracurricular opportunities at the middle school. And I know many parents that have come to me saying, I know it's extra work for the teachers and I completely understand that, but let the parents help. Let us, what can we do? And I think this is an area where we've had a very strong parent effort at the elementary school, and it tends to go down a little bit when they go to the middle school. So that's something I would like to explore and see what we can do. As far as math, I think I've kind of already spoken about that. So I don't think I need to say much more, except that, again, I think I want everyone to be able to feel successful in math. So again, I think that the way we can promote the curriculum so that everybody can be successful and feel that they can be successful in math.
Thank you, Heather. Tony?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Sure. How would you address the needs at the Thurston Middle School? Students of this age seem to need more structured social opportunities to practice their social skills and promote kindness. At the same time, we need to address gaps, particularly in math. Both of these issues are equally as important, and middle school often seems to get lost in the shuffle of Westwood public school programming. What additional support can be provided at this level?
Great, that's helpful. Thanks for saying it. Well, let me start first with the social emotional learning, which I think is the first part. So I think a couple of things there. As you know, I think everyone knows we did kind of a SEL curriculum review 3 years ago, and we're kind of still working through all those changes. We have the Second Steps program that we introduced this year, which is really more focused on the advisory time. So there's an advisory block of Thurston. So I think we're still trying to get that exactly right, but I think focusing there is one area to focus. I think the new dean of students that comes on board, obviously a lot of that work will be unfortunately dealing with kind of the behavioral issues, but I think the thought is over time, he or she can also focus on the programming piece, because what you really want to do is actually get at kind of the root problems on that. So that's kind of one piece, and I think they're connected, right? If we do a better job on social emotional learning, I think it will help students achieve success in every subject, not just math. Particularly on math, I think the topic that's coming up in the curriculum review there is a lot around particularly around vertical alignment. Our math scores tend to be quite strong at the elementary levels and then drop a bit at when they get to middle school. So I think they're discussing a lot, how do we better vertically align the curriculum through kind of those ages, as well as thinking about horizontal alignment as well, particularly aligning with science, which is obviously, there's a lot of alignment between science and math.
Thank you, Tony. Dory?
Thanks. And thank you for asking to have the question repeated, Tony, because I was like, that's a lot. It's a big question. I think we're very much in alignment actually across the district, and in every conversation I've had, that the students at the middle school do need extra support for a number of reasons, right? Because of the age that they are. I'm about to have a sixth grader, so I'm so curious at what lies ahead, but also because of some of the sort of the residual social emotional potentially delays that occurred during COVID for any number of reasons. It was just a really critical time, I think, in their development. As we look to move forward, something I have found has been really helpful, for our family, and I think for a number of other actually special education families, is thinking about how things can wrap around from school to home so that there is that sort of consistent message. And so I think if there is a way to enable the communication venues that go between the school and home so that we're walking and talking kind of the same language, I think that would be really helpful. I don't know that it's going to solve, every problem around math, and that it's going to solve every minute SEL issue, but I do certainly think it helps when parents and teachers are in lockstep together to do the best that they can for the students.
Okay, from social emotional learning and math to the environment. Dory, I'm going to pose this to you first. I'm sorry, no, here, actually, I'm skipping a question, which is why now I'm out of order. So this actually goes to Tony first. My apologies. Tony, how do schools become greener, and how do you support installing solar canopies over the parking lots at the high school?
So I think a good example of how we become greener is around the new school building, right? So I think we spent a lot of time on being net zero, and we had a whole subcommittee, a sustainability subcommittee that I was part of, that went through kind of a process to ensure, we were had the most sustainable building possible. And actually, it's just kind of a demonstration of that. MSBA actually had Mayor Plotkin, the chair of this SBC, as well as Superintendent Parks, actually do a forum, I think, or a presentation for other towns on the programs and how we did that successfully. And that involved a lot of partnership with Tom Philbin, our energy manager, who was a great partner on helping us think through that, as well as kind of the permit building committee. As far as the canopies, that's something that we'd have to bring before the school committee. We haven't talked about it. We talked about it, I think, before I was on the school committee. So I need to understand the cost and the benefits of that before making a decision.
Marlene, you're on mute.
Sorry, thanks. Dory, you're next.
Sure. I thought maybe, but I wasn't sure. Thank you so much. So actually becoming greener is something that is important to me. We're one of the families that does the composting. We have an electric car, we do cloth diapers. It's something that is near and dear to my heart. I'm really excited that the new school building, we're taking every effort that we can to make it more environmentally friendly. I think the kids actually recognize how important it is for us to be aware of the global good of preserving our environment, and I think they want to get involved. And so I think educating them and giving them ideas is actually one way that we can generate ideas. We can leverage their creativity and their curiosity around this. In terms of the parking garage, I have to echo what Tony said. I think that we have to evaluate fiscal decisions very carefully, put them in the greater context of the overall budget before we make decisions. And so I would want to hear more, evaluate further with people that probably know a little bit more about parking garages than I do before I make that decision.
Heather?
Sure. I agree that I think with something like the parking arrangement or the canopies, that is something that we need to look at within the budget. For any spending that we have, that is, money that needs to be taken away from somewhere else. There aren't infinite resources. So we need to be very careful and mindful and give people all of that information. So to understand that if we do this, then we might not be able to do that, and be really transparent with that sort of information. So again, as the other candidates spoke, I would like to learn more and to see how that would affect things. I also really like what Dory said about getting the kids involved. I think they are our best advocates in these sorts of issues and have the most passion, as well as there are many teachers that I've met across the different schools that really have a passion for this topic. And I'm guessing would love to do more. One thing that I think of off the top of my head are things like plastic water bottles. Like, what could we do to encourage the students to not bring in those, and for everybody to have the refillable ones, and making it easy for them to refill. So things like that. But I think having both staff and student driven initiatives is really the way to go, because that's how you're going to get the most buy-in. And that's something that I've seen in my own experience at work, is that people often have a lot of ideas at my school about what we can do, but then we need people to put in the work to follow through on them. And the way that we've been most successful is that when we have people that are really passionate, and to allow them to take the lead, and then those initiatives can be more successful.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, and we're gonna, this is gonna be the last question. We're gonna start with Dory. There are many educators leaving the profession. How do we best support our teachers here in Westwood and stop that attrition? What can we do to address the lack of substitutes as well?
Thank you. Yeah, I actually had a discussion this afternoon with some teachers in the district, and was echoing their concerns around the number of individuals who are leaving education. And I'm also aware through some conversations with principals that, in addition to that, applications are dropping, which is, obviously a concern for all of us. We need our educators. So, I think retention is about, I think we need to look at retention, right? And that's twofold. I think it's about opportunities for individuals to be able to feel like they're growing and thriving in their position through professional development and through working with other talented individuals. And then I think it's about helping individuals to feel valued. And whether that's through a positive work environment or through competitive pay and benefits. So I think those are the ways that we can think about employee retention. In terms of being a substitute, I actually know several substitutes throughout the district, and they love their role. And what they have told me is that they get involved, because it's a way to be connected with the school and with the community. As an educator told me this afternoon, teachers aren't in education because they expect to be millionaires. But I think they do it because they're really fantastic people. And I think providing a supportive, healthy environment, not only for our teachers, but for anybody we invite into our schools is critical.
Very good. Heather.
Yes, I am well versed at this topic as the director of administration at a school. We have been dealing with the issue of teacher retention and attrition of teachers, especially since the pandemic. And exactly as you and others have described, that the pipeline of educators, students going into education is getting smaller and smaller. And that's very worrisome for across the nation. It's a much bigger issue than Westwood, in that we really need to find ways to encourage students in college to want to be in education. And that's where it begins. One of the things that I'm even seeing at my school, where we offer a free master's degree for special education for our teachers, and even enrollment in a free program has been decreasing there. And so I am very familiar with this problem, and looking at ways of, increasing benefits and things like that is good, but there's a lot of work to be done in this area. As far as the issue of substitutes, I think what would really be helpful is that a lot of parents that I've spoken to have been very surprised to see what's happening at the high school in particular. For those of us like myself with a new high schooler, I have a ninth grader, to see that the way the system really works is that when your teacher's out sick, that then you don't have that class that day, or you just do assignments on your own. I think that's what has surprised a lot of parents, and they want to better understand what's going on there, why, what are the options. So again, I would just advocate for a little bit more transparency and information so parents understand what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you. Tony?
Yeah, so this is obviously a challenging problem, and I think it's one we're not sure yet if this was just a blip, pandemic blip. Obviously, the last 2 years have been challenging for everyone, but I think educators obviously felt that as well, and now they're being challenged, obviously, by just I think again a countrywide phenomenon around the behavioral issues that have popped up across children at all ages. So, I don't think this is an easy one to solve as far as that. I think, echoing some of Dory's, I think the best thing we can do, I think what keeps people in Westwood is kind of a culture, a building culture that really supports teachers, supports them in their professional development, supports them in their day-to-day education, supports them, financially, obviously, as well, and all the other pieces that people come to work. That kind of culture, I think, is still very strong. I think we have amazing leadership, amazing principals, amazing educators, and that culture, I think, is strong. I think hopefully continue. But that being said, that we have certainly had more attrition. As far as the substitutes, I think this is, at the high school. I'm not going to get into how we get more substitutes, but just as clarification, even before COVID, the way they did high school substitutes was the same. Basically, you assign it, you give somebody an assignment. If a teacher is out, we didn't have a staff of Spanish teachers to come in to teach, 11th grade Spanish. And so I don't think that's going to change, but maybe it's just a little bit more education that this actually is not a COVID thing. This is just the way they've been doing the high school for years.
Thank you, Tony. Well, I want to thank you all. We're going to now move to closing statements. We're going to go and have Heather start. Just a reminder, it's the same amount of time, 90 seconds.
Just like to start by again thanking everyone here, both at the League of Women Voters and Westwood Media, as well as everybody listening tonight for this opportunity, and for the other candidates as well. I think this has been a great conversation, and I hope it's one of many to come. I started this journey a few years ago, getting involved in the community and advocating for our kids, because I felt that my experience in education was something that I could really bring to Westwood, that I could bring to the Westwood school district and community. And that's what I still believe. I hope that if and when elected, I can be that advocate for the kids that have had a really tough time over the last 2 years. This has been an unprecedented time, and we really need to focus on the kids. And I feel that my experience in education and special education in particular, as well as as a director of administration for so many years, that I'm able to bring that to the committee. And it's a different perspective than what the current members have. So I hope that, with my experience and with my willingness to really talk to the whole community, to listen to people, and I'm really hoping that we can bring the community together to come to a common understanding, which I believe that we truly have, that we are all here for the kids and we want to give them the best education as possible. And I hope that I'm the person that can help accomplish that.
Thank you, Heather. Tony?
Yeah, let me just echo again. Thank you, Marlene. Thank Sheila and League of Women Voters. Thank Westwood Media, and thank, of course, Heather and Dory for writing and participating tonight. Another great opportunity. We really do have a special town here. Look, I'd like to ask for your vote for my reelection to the Westwood School Committee. I think we've talked a lot about my priorities, so I'm not going to focus there here at the end. But what I will focus on is I think if you ask people that watch the meetings or ask my colleagues on the school committee, I've demonstrated, I think, a really practical approach to making decisions that are best for the kids, best for our 3,000 children here in Westwood. I'm especially proud of the progress we've continued to make despite what I'd call a perfect storm with COVID-19 over the last 2 years as well. So I'd ask for your vote on April 26th. And I will echo what I said earlier. I've been busy. I'm working as hard as I did 6 years ago to get reelected. I've knocked on over 1,000 doors and talked to over 300 residents. So if you want me to come, I'll bring the coffee. If you have questions, concerns on anything, I'm happy to meet in person, happy to knock on your door, happy to get on the phone. My phone number is 857-498-0798. I think you know my email, my website. I'd ask for one of your 2 votes for school committee on or before April 26th. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Dory?
Yes, I'm going to echo the thank yous. This has been a fantastic opportunity. I'm very appreciative to the League of Women Voters, to Marlene, Westwood Media, and of course to Tony and Heather for participating this evening. And, you know, I just want to really convey that I understand that this is a time that is unprecedented in terms of school committees and in terms of towns being really torn apart for a number of reasons. And I have a background in really pulling people together, both in education and in human resources, as well as working directly within our schools as a PTO co-president, working with families, with teachers, and with students to bring a common understanding and help move things forward in a really positive way. I'm really hoping I can bring that to our town as a member of school committee. I think what we need at this moment in time are really thoughtful, engaged, collaborative stewards of the culture that we have built, to borrow Tony's word, in Westwood, and to carry that forward. I also respectfully ask for your vote on April 26th. There are 2 positions open, and so would love to have one of those seats. And I think you all are familiar with my website, but you can certainly also contact me via email, which is dory@westwood.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. And thank you for all of your involvement and engagement this evening. And a big thank you to all the candidates this evening. We also heard from the planning board candidates for their willingness to participate this evening and really talk to the citizens of Westwood. We wish you all good luck with the election, and thank you to our YouTube audience. And just a reminder again, the election is on April 26th. And I want to say, have a good night, everyone.